Jordan Peterson is wrong about leftists.
Mr. Reagan.
I know why there's a left wing. There's a left wing because inequality is a problem. It's a way worse problem than the radical leftists like to admit, because you can't lay it at the feet of capitalism and the free market. Inequality is a way worse problem than that. But it's definitely a problem. And because inequality is a problem, you need part of the political structure to speak up for the people who end up arrayed at the bottom of hierarchies. It's crucial. Someone has to speak for them. That's the place of the left.
This is wrong. Jordan Peterson has asserted in many interviews that there is a traditional role for leftists to play in society. His claim is that Western culture, democratic governments, capitalist economies rely on leftists to combat the inequity caused by hierarchies. In order to understand this perspective, let's take a step back. Jordan Peterson's general perspective about the political world is that hierarchies are necessary and useful. In fact, they are critical, rewarding skill, talent, education, intelligence, strength, precision, and a variety of other attributes that human beings tend to value, encourages everyone to try to improve themselves so that they can compete against other people who also have attributes that human beings value highly. This creates hierarchies. The problem with hierarchies, as Jordan Peterson puts it, is that at the bottom of all these hierarchies are a bunch of people who have very little value in said hierarchy. Jordan Peterson calls these people the dispossessed. Now, most people are not at the bottom of every hierarchy. Most people are somewhere in the middle of most hierarchies, and a few people are lucky enough to be really high up in maybe one or two hierarchies, or maybe even a few. Extremely lucky people will be at the top of many hierarchies, and extremely unlucky people will be at the bottom of many hierarchies. This is the tragedy of the dispossessed. Now, Jordan Peterson asserts, I think correctly, that right-wing people appreciate the critical utility of hierarchies in society. Right-wing people tend to exploit the nature of hierarchies by the use of the capitalist system, for instance, laissez-faire economics. However, a mere appreciation of the value of hierarchy disregards the tragedy of the dispossessed. According to Jordan Peterson, it has traditionally been the role of the left to recognize this tragedy, illuminate it for the rest of us, and formulate plans to do something about it. If the left encourages the rest of us on the right to go along with these plans, the idea is that some of the suffering created by hierarchies will be alleviated. However, I contend that there is a fundamental flaw in Jordan Peterson's reasoning. It's not left-wing political proclivities that facilitate the recognition of the tragedy of the dispossessed. Being a Democrat doesn't let you see suffering better. You know what lets you see suffering? Compassion. For somebody to recognize somebody else's suffering or an injustice that appears in the world, one does not need a particular political perspective. What one needs is compassion. To suppose that it's primarily a characteristic of politically leftist individuals to recognize suffering and try to amend it suggests that politically right-wing people lack compassion. Not only do I believe that that is not the case, but I believe that it is radically incorrect. Now, I do believe that many people on the left are compassionate. I see very passionate leftists, often emotionally distressed about perceived injustices and other problems that they see in the world. I know that they are compassionate people. I do not fault them for that. However, I believe that they are perceiving problems that don't exist. Leftists have fundamental flaws in their perceptions of the world, and therefore they see dispossession often where no dispossession exists. They see injustice where there is no injustice. They see conspiracies and lies and all kinds of nefarious things that aren't actually there. So I'm not saying that it's impossible for politically left-minded people to be able to help this world. I do contend, however, that first they need to see the world realistically. They need to see the world as it is. They need to have the veil lifted. They need to wake up to the realities of existence. Only then will they be able to effectively identify the true victims of dispossession. Only then will they be able to formulate plans to rectify the dispossession affected by hierarchies. Basically, only then will they be able to help the true victims in society. So, as it stands, I don't think leftists can be of value in society. But despite this inability on the left, we still do tend as a society to help the dispossessed, and sometimes we succeed in helping people who need help. Now, how do we do this? If leftists are the only people trying to help the dispossessed, and leftists have this distorted view of the world, how do we ever succeed in helping anybody? It's because conservatives are also compassionate. Not only do I think conservatives are compassionate, but I think they are just as compassionate as leftists. Now, not all conservatives are very compassionate, but not all leftists are very compassionate. You've got this small number of extremely compassionate leftists, and you have a small number of extremely compassionate conservatives. But then you have like super selfish, greedy conservatives, you have super selfish, greedy leftists, and then you got this sort of gradation between those two extremes. And in my experience, I haven't seen much of a difference in the level of compassion of those on the left and the level of compassion of those on the right. But it is only the compassionate conservatives affecting significant positive change in the world because they see the world accurately. They're able to properly target the true victims in society. They're the ones able to help those who really need help. So I don't think there is a role for the left. I don't think we need the left in order to identify the victims of dispossession that the hierarchies produce. I think we conservatives can identify those people on our own. We can formulate plans to help the dispossessed all on our own, and we can affect change without the influence of the delusional left. Now here's the twist. I don't think Jordan Peterson actually believes what he's saying. I think Jordan Peterson would agree with everything I've said in this video. So why does Jordan Peterson say that there's a role for the left? I think he's trying to be inclusive. I think he's trying very hard to avoid alienating people who might be put off by a wholesale rejection of the left or of Democrats. Leftists tend to be delicate creatures, easily offended. They will turn you off in an instant if you trigger them. So Peterson tries very hard to be inclusive, like trying to coax a baby deer close enough to pet. One of the pieces of food he uses to coax the baby deer closer is empathy. He explains that he himself has left-leaning psychological tendencies. And I believe that's actually true. I too have left-leaning psychological tendencies. So I don't think he's being deceptive when he says that specifically. However, he does use a rhetorical trick when talking about the value of the left. And here's what I mean by that. Jordan Peterson does not say that the left today is useful. Jordan Peterson says specifically the traditional role of the left. Jordan Peterson is talking about a hypothetical left. He's talking about how he wishes the left was and how it might have been at certain times in the past. I think that Jordan Peterson believes that people who fit into certain psychological categories should be able to benefit society in certain ways based on their nature. Because of Jordan Peterson's research, I think that he believes that leftists should be able to identify dispossession created by hierarchies more easily than conservatives. They should be better at noticing suffering. He wants people who call themselves leftists to feel encouraged by him and not discouraged. But he's also encouraging people to take a different tack if they want to consider themselves leftists. However, leftists in 2018 are not compassionate people that want to help the world. They're delusional activists who want to tear everything down. We're no longer dealing with a left and a right. We're dealing with an up and a down. We're dealing with a spectrum of the rational versus the realms of delusion. Those of us along the spectrum of the rational must ourselves be compassionate because we're the only ones that can identify real victims in society. We're the only ones that can develop plans to fix the problems we see. We're the only ones who can affect real positive change. Those who exist in a realm of delusion, in a fantasy world, can never really benefit the real world. It's up to us and us alone. So Jordan Peterson is wrong about the left. Yes, there may be a traditional role for them. But as they exist today, in 2018, they are less than useless. They are destructive. They are a destructive force in society. Well, that's it for me. If you don't completely hate me after watching this video, consider contributing to my Patreon. With these funds, I'll be able to make more videos every day. Recently, I had to take several days off to work. I honestly don't make that much money doing these YouTube videos, but I'd like to do more of them. I have an enormous list of videos, and that list keeps growing. And I just don't have time to make them all. I don't have time to make even a small percentage of them. I would love to be able to focus exclusively on making these videos and trying to distribute these ideas. My Patreon account, if you're interested in contributing, is listed in the description below. So if you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more like this, please subscribe. And if you hate me, you probably really like the category of leftist. But it's not about labels, man. You gotta learn to shed those labels like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. Walk away, get red-pilled, and exist within the spectrum of rationality. Good night.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
You and I are told increasingly we have to choose between a left or right. Well, I'd like to suggest there is no such thing as a left or right. There's only an up or down.
We are Americans. God bless you and thank you.